We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Oh, they're not going to like this one.
We have Candace Owens.
Candace Owens.
Welcome.
Hello.
What's up,
How you feeling?
He was in the media for 3-4 decades, and suddenly you wanted me to believe overnight that he was like Adolf Hitler and a racist. So
Does that bother you that people call you an Uncle Tom?
no, not at all. First off, because if they read the book, Uncle Tom was the hero. Then suddenly I like flipped over to CNN and it was Don Lemon's like crying. The words "never been a slave" came out of my mouth, but I never said racism doesn't exist. I was saying if these illegals get into the inner city communities, the first people that are going to be harmed are going to be Black Americans. There better not be a man that lives here. We're just here to check to make sure. If you want this check, Dad can't be home. Every other ill that Black America is facing today is because we've removed fathers from the homes.
Ring the bell, school's in. Candace is out there teaching the Breakfast Club. Hey fam, welcome and welcome back to One and Done. I didn't think I'd ever see Candace Owens on the Breakfast Club. Big props to Charlamagne and DJ Envy for inviting Candace on here. She is a great voice, a positive voice, and I am a fanboy. Now this is one of the most interesting interviews on the Breakfast Club I have seen. Not as controversial, doesn't have as much fireworks, but it's very, very interesting to watch Charlamagne's body language and even DJ Envy. Plus, we no longer have that annoying woman, Cheslin. I've forgotten her last name, so I apologize. So before we roll the tape, if you want to help a brother out, help me get to the 1,000 sub club, don't forget to hit the like, smash the subscribe, ring the notification bell, and share this video far and wide. And without delay, folks, let's roll that tape.
We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Oh, they're not going to like this one.
We have Candace Owens.
Candace Owens.
Welcome.
Hello.
What's up,
How you
girl?
feeling?
I feel great. A little tired. Had a wedding this weekend, but always feel great.
Back to New York. You're originally from here, right?
Yeah, I was born in New York, raised in Stanford, and then lived in New York after university for like 7 years. So I worked just 2 blocks away from here.
What part of New York
Did I live in or?
was born?
I was
raised?
born in White Plains.
Oh, White Plains. Okay. By the Bronx. Okay.
What is the Candace Owens origin story? I mean, I know a little bit of it because, you know, me and you actually used to have a lot of conversations back in the day before she changed her number. But
He was mad about
too.
that.
I mean, I did change mine,
yours
but
too.
you know.
Girl, he was mad about that. He was like, I've been hitting up, but she ain't going. She ain't
Because
going.
it kept going blue. I was like, is she just ignoring me?
No, I wouldn't have ignored you. I would have answered.
Did they get rid of that other woman that used to be on there? That is it, Cheslin someone? The one with the masculine energy, the roast beef energy. The one that got destroyed by Vivek and Larry Elder.
You know, I feel like I have just a very regular story. Like I said, like I was born in New York, raised in Stanford. There was nothing, you know, particularly that stood out in my childhood that made me think that I was going to go into politics. I feel like I landed into politics kind of accidentally. And I say accidentally because I thought I was a liberal my whole life. You know, I thought I was on the left my whole life and really didn't pay attention to politics in any meaningful way. And then, you know, when Trump was running for office, I didn't want him to be elected. I was like this, not because I thought he was a racist or a sexist, but just because I thought it was crazy to go from Obama, who had a certain decorum about him, to suddenly this sort of brash New Yorker. But I thought it was weird when all of a sudden the people that liked Trump, you know, everyone thought he was like this iconic symbol of business. He was in rap songs. Trump was the status, flipped on him in 1 second. I just didn't.
And you know what? The thing was, okay, Obama was smooth, but he was a snake. He was an absolute snake, that dude. He came in, he got elected because he was supposed to bring the country together, and he ended up being one of the most divisive presidents. Imagine if Trump did half the things this dude did. Went into office with 3 mil, came out with 72. Credited with the most bombs dropped under any president. Started wars on his watch. A little bit like his partner in crime, Joe Biden. The world was full of optimism when Obama got elected. He got the Nobel Peace Prize just for being elected, and all he did was divide the country. He came in claiming meritocracy, but by the time he left, him and his wife, Big Mike, were claiming racism left, right, and center. And I wonder how many chefs they've interviewed lately. Not a job you really want to jump straight into, is it? You never know if it's going to be your last supper that you're preparing.
And I didn't buy the narrative that he was in the media for 3-4 decades, and suddenly you wanted me to believe overnight that he was like Adolf Hitler and a racist. So I just didn't trust the media's narrative about him, and so I decided to actually listen to what he said. I still didn't vote for him in 2016, but I wanted to just listen to what he actually said. And then when I saw what he was saying versus how it was being reported, I just found it to be extremely dishonest. So I started researching more, learning more. And then I got kind of angry, like just with the the lies, because I do think Black Americans are intentionally manipulated emotionally by the media and, kind of kept dumb but emotional intentionally by the school system. And I started reading up on like Thomas Sowell, Shelby Steele, a bunch of Black scholars that I originally had dismissed as Uncle Toms. And, irony now is I get called an Uncle Tom all the time. So I got what was coming, but yeah.
And Thomas Sowell, what a legend. Now, why doesn't this guy get propped up? Super intelligent. And if you look at some of his old interviews, way back in the 70s, everything he was saying back then has come to fruition. He said how bad the war on poverty was going to affect the Black community. And not just the Black community, because worldwide, especially in the West, that model was followed everywhere. And the results are the same. Well, maybe not exactly the same, but extremely similar. When you mess with the nuclear family, you're going to get bad outcomes. And that's exactly what we've got.
And then I realized that actually I've always been a conservative. I just didn't know it. And economically speaking, of course, the conservative arguments make the most sense.
Does that bother you that people call you an Uncle Tom?
No, not at all. First off, because if they read the book, Uncle Tom was the hero. But also because I get it. How can I fault people for something that I would have engaged in for the majority of my life? I thought the same thing about Black conservatives. Like I thought it was this betrayal, but I never actually understood it. It was just an emotional response. And I think that kind of is, if you come out of the public school system, I can't imagine how you could be a Black conservative when just the way that they even tell us our own history is just not true, Like
when you think of a Trump or just anybody, you're fine with them, but then you learn like their politics, or you learn what they believe spiritually, and then you're like, you're turned off from it.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's necessarily
Bruh, what's your name? What is your name? Nah, I'm not going to go too hard on Charlamagne. Okay, all right. But seriously, look at the seat you're sitting in, and what do you call yourself? And you're talking spiritually, bro.
Politics. I really do think the media plays the biggest part in it, because Trump, as far as I know, Trump's been, maybe he used to be a Democrat, but he's been a Republican and a conservative for a long time. I mean, we know he had to have been a conservative in terms of economics. He's wealthy. So you'd be hard pressed to find someone that's wealthy and, advocating for Marxist beliefs. But yeah, I just feel like it's more about the media wants power. The media has a vested interest in things politically, and they like to make us think that we're having this open conversation and we're learning the truth about people. But these are just hatchet smear jobs, libeling people, and I think deluding a ton of people to turn against their own best interests.
So were you?
And what I find interesting already, now sorry guys, for obvious reasons, I will be interrupting this video more than I normally would. So I will try and make it value added rather than rambling. But what I will say quickly is that I've noticed Charlamagne, he's a little bit different to the interviews that he had with Vivek and Larry Elder. He seems to be a little more attentive, and it sounds like from the top of the interview that these two did have a relationship. So I'm seeing him and I'm noticing him being a little more respectful than he was with, say, Vivek and Larry Elder. Let's see if that continues.
You more anti-media as opposed to being pro-Trump?
Well, no, I actually, once I actually heard what he had to say, I was like, that's a pretty solid pitch. I mean, it was his Dimondale, Michigan speech particularly. He got up there and he just started listing all of the statistics in Black America in terms of poverty. I mean, these were just real statistics that he was talking about. And his pitch was basically like, you've been giving your vote to Democrats for 60 years. Why don't you just try something different? I think that's a pretty good elevator pitch. Like, hey, you've been doing the same thing for a long time. I'm not saying I'm amazing, but why don't we try something different and see if it gets better for you? And then suddenly I flipped over to CNN and it was Don Lemon's crying. I think it was, I'm maybe being, but it was just, they were so dramatic and they were lying about what he said. They're like, he looked you in the face and told you you were poor. I'm like, that's not what he did at all. So I just got interested. I'm a very curious, interested person. If I get interested in something, I will just take it all the way, read books. And I'm like, why are they doing this? Why are all the media companies that I believed my whole life just lying about it? Just say what he actually said and let Black Americans decide for themselves.
Damn, I'm fanboying right now. I'm a huge fan of Candace Owens. She thinks and speaks extremely logically, and I love her takes. She gives credit where credit's due, and she places accountability where it needs to be placed. So yes, I am a bit of a fanboy.
I didn't sue my high school for racism, but
for not protecting you during that time. I said, right? They said for not protecting you. They said
I just did deal with the media does.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, I get it because it's something that I've talked about at length. But essentially, I had the situation happen to me in high school where a somebody that I was actually best friends with, left me horrific voicemails. They were racist voicemails. There's no other way to slice it.
They called you a nigga because you didn't want to date him?
No, he actually, I think he was gay, to be honest. It was nothing about dating. I think this was kind of a circumstance of like, I had my first beer. I'll be honest, I got a boyfriend and I just stopped hanging out with my friends. Very typical high school, stupid stuff. And this gay guy that I was friends with was like outraged by it. And one night he was out drinking with kids that were way younger than him that I had never met. And they left me horrific voicemails. I mean, like bringing in like Rosa Parks. There was tons of threats.
They did what?
They were just like, it was,
up about Rosa Parks.
like it was, there was no way to slice it, but it was, they were extremely racist. And it was terrifying too, because I didn't know who the phone calls were coming from. Long story short, one of the kids in the car happened to be the governor of Connecticut's son. So it became this sort of overnight political story.
Well, do you know what the amazing thing is, is that this has happened to her, but she hasn't let it affect her. Now, she could be a victim crying and screaming on a couch. Instead, she's taken the positive out of it, the learnings, drawn strength from that experience. And you've got to admire that about Candace. This is Candace. This is what she does. She does not have a victim mindset. And there has to be something wrong if you don't find inspiration in the strength, in the way she moves. She definitely has Mama Bear energy, I got to tell you that.
And while it was going on and there were like news cameras in front of the school, I left school and just homeschooled for, I think it was about 6 to 8 weeks. And basically we got reimbursed for the time that I was homeschooling is what happened. But yeah, so when people retell that story now, it's like she sued her school for racism and the NAACP helped her. And I'm like, no, the NAACP did not help me. They used my face and my name to fundraise for the NAACP, which is actually the reason why I don't like the NAACP. It's like a very valid reason because I was a little girl, you know, I was 16, 17 years old, and it was a really hard situation to go through as a child. You know, I'm not like I am now, 34 years old and married with that support system. It was kind of fame you don't want, you know? But I'm actually very grateful that it happened to me because it allowed me to really consider what the media was. Even though I was still a liberal, I knew what the media was. Like I knew the media was all about selling a headline. I knew then I got an early lesson in the NAACP. I think organizations that never want racism to go away, because how are they going to fundraise? Like if you're a CEO of the NAACP and you're earning X amount of dollars, you got to keep the racism narrative going on or you're going to work yourself out of business. So.
And I look, after doing the Don Lemon interview with Elon Musk, the one I could barely stomach, I had to break it into 2 parts. And even then I didn't cover the full thing. I am getting the complete opposite out of this interaction. And it's interesting too, because the Breakfast Club, they are listening attentively. And I'm feeling the energy from Candace. It's a complete different energy. It's such a positive energy, an inspirational energy rather than that victimhood that Don Lemon was pushing. That's why that shit is dying. People want optimism. They want reasons to get up. They want to see a future. And if you can take anything from Candace, it's her positive mindset. Now, Candace, I believe she's just had her 4th child. I could be wrong, but she's living what she advocates for.
So looking at the country now, right? Of course, there's Trump, there's Biden. Who do you think is better for our community?
Obviously. Well, first and foremost, just for everybody, you should have a president that's, you know, not mentally deteriorating like Biden is. I mean, he's in full mental deterioration. It's crazy to pretend anything else that's happening right now. It's scary first and foremost because we have real enemies out there, and you have a person that can't lead. You know, he can't remember what he ate for breakfast. He's saying things. I mean, the amount of times that he keeps talking about his dead son as if he's alive, it's very alarming. And I don't say that with any ill will in my heart either, because he's showing signs of when my grandfather, who passed a couple of years ago, started, you know, his mind started diminishing and you start to see those early signs of dementia, the way he walks, his gait, the way that he's falling, that this is crazy. Everyone should be outraged, whether you're on the left or the right. But in terms of the better candidate for Black Americans, I asked people the question, how were you living under Trump? The person that they told you was going to put us back into chains and we were all going to be slaves again. How was the economy under Trump and how are you doing today? And every time you ask that question, everyone knows that they were living better under Trump because he was deregulating the environment, and people were just living better under Trump. And he is, in my opinion, a better president because at least he's telling you the truth and he's telling you what he actually thinks. You know, one of the things that I hated the most about him when he first came down the escalator, I was like, oh, he's way too brash. You know, Obama sounds way more polite. But I asked the question, do you want to be politely lied to or have somebody that's at least telling you what they think about you in no uncertain terms? So
Exactly. Don't treat the public and your constituents like imbeciles, like toddlers. We're adults. We can hear the truth. We can handle the truth. Now, is Trump going to tell us the truth all the time? No. But does he have America foremost in the front of his mind? Is it his priority? The answer is yes, and you can judge his first term by that. Did he get everything done? No. But his second term is going to be similar to the first. He's going to be concentrating on deregulating and opening up markets to make the economy prosperous and the people prosperous, creating jobs, creating opportunities for people to start businesses. That's what he did in the last term. And securing the border. He is going to secure that border. Now, Obama deported 3 million plus people while he was in office, I believe. Americans didn't have a problem with that, but put Trump's name next to that, people start regurgitating. Is that the right word? Throwing up.
So, I like Trump for a ton of reasons. And for me, it was always about the economic argument. And I knew that he was going to be a better candidate for Black Americans because of that, especially, build the wall sounded so wild, right? Back in 2016, it sounded wild. It sounded xenophobic. And I was saying, if these illegals get into the inner city communities, the first people that are going to be harmed are going to be Black Americans.
People actually were mad at you, right? When you got into the conversation with T.I. at the Revolt Music Conference, right? And you were saying that, and people didn't understand it, but it seems like people are understanding what you were trying to say back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, T.I.'s a numpty. T.I. got bitch slapped, tossed around, and looked like a clown. Even Big Mike stepped in to clean that mess up. Let's carry on.
And I am so happy to have those moments because, I think T.I.'s a trash person. I'll say that 1,000 times over because first and foremost, I had spoken to T.I. prior to that event. T.I. was the only person on stage that I actually knew. And for the same reasons that I met you. Kanye had put us in touch. We had talked. And I know that T.I. thinks more conservatively. So he was literally putting on a show. And it just makes me wonder, especially with all the stuff that came out in the Diddy lawsuit, who's controlling T.I.? Because that was wild. He was literally putting on a show he didn't know me on stage. He was surprised I was saying the stuff. He was way more level-headed and rational when we were on the phone. And I still look back on the moment. I'm like, what was he doing? It was like a circus act up there.
Yeah, and he looked like an absolute B word. He really did. He was all emotional and argumentative, not based on any facts, completely on emotion, and didn't add anything to the conversation. Zero. He looked like a clown, and that's why it went viral.
And he was doing something that I thought was harmful because we were actually having a great discussion. And yet he created a little moment, and that was all the media ran with, despite the fact we were on that stage for hours. They ran with that moment, and I was really upset about it. But you're right. I was talking a lot about illegal immigration and saying this is something that we need to pay attention to because eventually the Black vote's not going to matter. Something that they worked so hard for is not going to matter. They get enough illegals in. What are we at? 10 million under Biden? And they're doing it intentionally.
Wow.
It's going to be the same thing that they did to Black Americans in the 60s. What Lyndon Baines Johnson did when he established welfarism and the Great Society Act. They want to get these people in, offer them handouts, and turn them into economic slaves that will continue to vote for Democrats because they're getting free handouts. And it's incredibly racist, first and foremost, but because Black Americans are still, a lot of Black Americans, I should say, are still living under this deception that Lyndon Baines Johnson was a good president, even though he was an avowed racist. He hated Black people. One of the, so many times, hard R referring to us as the N-word. I'll have those N-words voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
There's no such thing as free money, folks. They hand out with their left hand and they take twice as much with their right. Hand out with their left hand, but the man's coming back to collect. You better believe it. I wonder if he's smiling right now.
And this man is being hailed as a hero because he had to sign the Civil Rights Act, essentially with a figurative gun to his head because the country was on fire. JFK had just died and there were riots in the streets protesting because of racism, and he did not want to sign it, but he did. And with the other hand, he signed the Great Society Act and incentivized welfarism and, programs to incentivize not marrying Black men. To think that we had government agents knocking on the door, going into the homes of Black women and being like, there better not be a man that lives here. We're just here to check to make sure if you want this check, dad can't be home. Every other ill that Black America is facing today is because we've removed fathers from the home. So I'm a big, I use my platform to talk about men a lot and the need for male leadership, everything that is so harmful, this, Me Too, false feminism, all of this crap. It's anti-man, and it's anti-man for a reason because a society cannot survive without strong men. A household cannot survive without strong men. We need strong men to lead homes. And so the fracturing of the Black family, I think, was the test, we were the mice in the experiment, let's see how that goes. And now they're kind of doing that writ large. And I hate feminism so much. I can't even tell you because what it's about is it's just an attack on men.
Yeah. look, if we look at countries that have traditional values where they don't have the wealth, but they have a family structure, the husband generally leads and provides for the family, and the wife raises the children and keeps harmony in the home. You know, countries like China and India, they have a 3 to 4% fatherless home rate. In America, it's 27%. And we know the statistics for single mother homes. Incarceration statistics go through the roof, crime rates skyrocket, and this is what these handouts caused and sped up. And I think this is what Candace is alluding to.
You just said a lot, Candace. So let's talk about some of these things. Now, you said a lot. Now with the politicians, right? With whether it's Lyndon B. Johnson, Trump, Biden, I think people are able to ignore a lot of their BS as long as they can get something done.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. So that's why I don't even like to talk about the person. I like to talk about the policy. So what is the difference between...
Now, Charlamagne. Big ups to Charlamagne because he hasn't said a lot. He's been listening and been attentive this whole time. But that is a little disingenuous, especially when it comes to Trump. You always put Trump TDS before policies. Let's be honest.
Traditional conservatives in MAGA.
Well, I would say between the traditional conservatives and MAGA.
Yeah, like before what the Conservative Party was before MAGA and what it is now.
Yeah, so I think what you're describing is that there was this fracture in the conservative movement because people realized that when he was referring to the swamp, what he meant was it didn't actually matter if you were on the left or the right. They were all working together in D.C. and selling out all of America. I mean, there is no reason why you go to D.C. and become a multimillionaire. You're supposed to be there to serve the American people. You're there taking our tax dollars. So what was happening was these lobbying interests, like, you know, Big Pharma goes down and they lobby and they'll offer money to a candidate to go push a drug, like the COVID vaccine. Or they'll lobby for war. It's like, you know, biggest lobby, of course, military industrial complex. So we're all suffering. You're going to work because these lobbyists are getting their incentives done by buying out these politicians. And so Trump kind of hit the scene as somebody who wasn't bought and paid for because he didn't need their money. He wasn't like a random congressman going to DC with no money. And he just started talking about the swamp. Like, it's not even Republican or Democrat. And I want people to wake up to that because I'm not here like ride or die for Republicans. They all sell us out. Like, the stuff that they did during COVID is criminal. It's
Man, again, I agree with Candace. I'm aligning with her so far. Both parties can be as bad as each other at any given time. That's why they say the uniparty, the deep swamp, deep state. That's why Trump came and jumped in. He thought Obama did a terrible job, and got to agree with him. Everything's gone downhill since Obama got in. Everything. Patriotism, racism, transgenderism. He's caused a chasm with the isms. Otherwise, Trump would probably be just playing golf right now. That's why Vivek's jumped in. Vivek was worried that they're going to do something nasty to Trump. Now they're trying all their best to bankrupt this dude, and all they're succeeding in is making him more and more popular because it's so obvious. Would it be handy if he was less, divisive with the things he says? The fact is, Trump is humorous. You can't believe everything you can't take him seriously with everything he says. That's what people don't understand. He has a lot of charisma. He's a satirist. Now, someone said to me in the comments that Obama made so much money because he was doing, tours, doing speeches. People were paying him for doing speeches. Come on, please. They're paying him because he did them favors while he was in office. It's called payback. It's called retribution. This is the guy that hands out with the left and then takes two with the right. Now, Trump's filling stadiums. It didn't take a wage when he was in office. He almost lost $1 billion from going into office and coming out of office. That's the sort of sacrifice he's made. Now, you could argue maybe he could have lost that money anyway. Fair enough. But he also, while he was losing that money, don't forget he didn't draw on a wage for being president. Now, I'm not here to champion for Trump. However, I can see the weaponization that the current government is using against him, their political opponent. To me, that's just simply unjust. And if they could, they'd lock him up for a parking ticket. But they're changing laws. They're trying him in blue states. They are really wrecking the fabric of the country. The founding fathers would be turning in their graves. And I'm not saying the founding fathers were perfect, but they did set up one of the best political systems on the planet with lots of checks and balances. And this is why the US politics is so important worldwide. globally. We need a strong US. We need the US to lead, but we need honest leaders. Leaders that are transparent, leaders that tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And there's nothing wrong with Trump having a relationship with Putin, Xi Jinping, the little rocket man in North Korea, Kim Jong-un, his name escaped me for a second. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies even closer. Like raising kids, you need to build a rapport, a trust, and then by example, you lead. And if you're leading in the right way, success should trail right behind you. Now, Trump is not a perfect leader. No one is. Every person in history is flawed. I was a huge fan of Nelson Mandela. I still am. But he was a flawed human. But he was by far in the end a net positive. And look what's happened to South Africa. Unfortunately, human beings are selfish and they are corruptible. Is Donald Trump perfect? Absolutely not. But he is by far the best option that's still available right now. Personally myself, I was a Vivek Ramaswamy, like Candace, I was on the Vivek bus train. Now he still can play an important part in this administration. I think he is a superstar. He will probably be a future president. But what they're trying to do to Trump right now is to bankrupt him and make sure that no other wealthy people that can't be bought run for president. Because they can't have that, can they? Because these people, these businessmen, they don't want to go to war. They don't want to do favors all over the place, all around the world. They want to look after their own. And this is becoming popular. Look at Argentina, look at Italy. Common sense policies and politics. And these politicians are stepping into a void, or businessmen are stepping into a void left by current career politicians. Let's carry on. I waffled too much. Sorry about that.
First off, trillions of dollars you're signing these omnibus bills. If you read into it where that money is going, it's insane. It's literally going, to museums, boards of museums. They're quite literally money laundering is what's happening when they sign these bills. But they keep it so that the information level is so low for Americans that it's like, oh, COVID's so bad. Like, we're going to give you a check that's like, $300. This basically describes welfarism, right? Like, despite the fact that there's been trillions of dollars since the establishment of welfare, Black Americans are poorer today than we were before it. People don't know this, but during the time of Jim Crow, before welfare was established in the 1950s, Black Americans were actually outpacing white Americans in this country in terms of economic growth. And the reason for that was because our families were together. We had good values. The government only wants to give you the bare minimum. But where's the rest of the money? Where is it going? They sign these bills making you think that this money is going to you. It's not. They are stealing from the American people.
Border bill, that's a perfect example. Wasn't the border bill, it was money for the Ukraine with a little bit for the border. So they present it as the border bill with bags of cash for Ukraine. And it's great that people like Candace are speaking up, because people do need to speak up. Why are you losing your houses? Why are your families starving when the Democrats are robbing you blind from one side, throwing the money out to Ukraine? Now, it's not just Ukraine, could be anybody. Iran, Israel, wherever else they've been throwing money around left, right and center. Palestine, throwing that money out the front door, and then they're letting illegal migrants come through the back door. Not only are they letting them come through the back door, they're going, come on in and here's some money. Knock yourself out. Don't worry, it's only going to cost our taxpayers $7,000 per head a month. And who knows what they're here for? Are they here for good or bad? And why have they passed, if they're seeking asylum, why have they passed many, many, many countries before they come through the southern border? Why haven't they gone to those countries for asylum? Something super sinister going on there, for sure.
To me, it's a play.
That's why I don't think. That's why I think if you're Black, you shouldn't be beholden to any political party, Democrat or Republican.
Right. I mean, I think that any concept of saying that I am a Republican forever, or a Democrat forever, is a nonsense. You should always look at the candidates that are running, and any.
Let me know in the comments, who's Charlamagne? Has anyone heard who Charlamagne is actually going to vote for? I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, I'm pretty sure he said he's not going to vote for Trump. Now that just squashes his last statement if that is true.
Why do you think our people have so much backlash when you ask so many questions?
Well, because I think that they don't realize that they've been manipulated against their own interests. And a lot of it is when you start telling the truth, you become a problem to the establishment, right? So if you're the military industrial complex and you want people to just kind of sleepwalk into another war, and I'm sitting here telling you that, Pentagon just can't keep finding the trillions of dollars that they send overseas. They've got this budget and they're sending all this money to Ukraine. And then they say, oh, we don't know where all the money went. It's being laundered and it's being sent back to a very small group of powerful people. And so when you have someone like me who's cutting through all of the emotional arguments, you have to turn that person into persona non grata. Right. And what better way to do it than to have their own community attacking them and saying that they're, pro-white or anti-black. I mean, it's a nonsense things that they say about me. If you listen to what I'm actually saying, I'm sitting here providing a blueprint for Black Americans to get ahead because it's time. OK, it's time. We've been doing this for a very long time in this country. Black America, wake up. OK, they don't like you. They don't like us. OK, there's
so you're
not
anti-
America has
yes, government.
America.
Yeah, like the government, the American government. Why would you think the American government wants to help you? Well, at what point in history has that proven to be right? And I'll try.
And it's not just the American government, it's the governments that implement the policies she's talking about, the Great Society Act, the Kick Your Daddy Out of Your House Act, the Break Up the Nuclear Family Act. That policy doesn't work anywhere. It has the reverse effect. Now, maybe it was intentional because they don't seem to be curtailing it or stopping it or putting other incentives in to build and strengthen families. For instance, they're happy for a family of 2, 3, 4 in the household to lose their home. Not a problem. They don't care about that. What, you didn't pay your mortgage? Out you go. Let's go over here and we're going to give people free drugs. We're going to put them up in apartments for free. Taxpayers going to pay for it. It has to be intentional. Stevie Wonder could see what they're doing wrong here. They're encouraging poor, bad behavior. How the hell is a human being supposed to function if they're off their face and their whole life is around searching for the next hit, the next fix? And what happens to the mum and dad that's raising a family, working hard? Maybe they've made a couple of poor decisions. Maybe they've lost their house for a reason. I would rather my tax dollars go to find out why that is and assist them rather than assisting people that have a drug problem to stay on that drug problem. And not only that, house them when they haven't done anything to earn that housing, which they're probably going to trash. Just my opinion. I'm pro-family. I'm not going to hide from that. Pro-family. That's the foundation of building a great society.
Challenge that and I'll make it wider to all Americans. When has it ever been the circumstance that you felt that the government really just was out for your own best interests? Think of them as a corporation. They want to grow themselves. They want new departments, bigger departments, larger budgets like any other corporation would want. And they never want to leave DC because we don't have term limits, which we should have, right? If we had term limits and said you can only serve for 4 years, well, then guess what they would be doing for those 4 years? Trying to shrink government because they'd have to come back out and be us, right? Mm-hmm.
And there's no burden of performance on governments and government departments. Think about it. Who do you know that works inside the government, for the government, a government department? Do they ever get sacked? Do they have a burden of performance? No, because the money is never ending. It's guaranteed. They operate on a different playing field. They're like a spoiled child. Take. That's what governments do. They don't create as a whole. You need self-governance, and that starts in the home.
When you look at the way that your tax dollars are being spent, you should be outraged. You should be angry, but stop thinking that the enemy is, they constantly have us arguing against each other, women versus men, black versus white,
Exactly.
It's a nonsense. The reason why they want us constantly warring is because it distracts from all of us coming together and taking a look at who the real criminals are.
So is this the reason why I haven't really heard you pushing people to vote for any particular candidate this go around?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm very clear about the fact I let everything play out, but I absolutely love Vivek Ramaswamy. Obviously, he's not running anymore, but his ideas and his laser sharp focus on what the actual issues were, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I'm obviously voting for Trump. We were all doing better under Trump. It's that simple. I don't care what else they have to say, the libels, the smears. I get it. You do it to me. So I just don't even pay attention. I actually find it to be quite boring now,
Well, the thing that I find bizarre, right? People get upset about what Trump says, but they don't seem to get upset whilst on Joe Biden's watch. Human trafficking, fentanyl drug problem, open border, wars left, right and center, Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, Russia. There's many other wars going on as well. But no. People are upset because of Trump's one-liners. They want to throw hissy fits because of Trump's one-liners. He got rid of ISIS in 6 months. There was no wars started on his watch. He started the withdrawal of Afghanistan, and then Joe Biden came in and messed it up. He had secure borders. He did away with many regulations so people could start businesses. Not perfect, but a businessman. He knows for a society to prosper, they have to create, innovate, and sell those products and knowledge. It's not rocket science, but career politicians, they make it look as though it's rocket science.
They were just giving out money during COVID. It was crazy.
But that's what a lot of people loved. They loved the stimulus checks. They loved the PPP. So
love those handouts.
Say you were doing better under Trump. That's what people point to. But look at the circumstances it took for that to happen. We don't want to have to go through another pandemic in order to get that money.
Yeah, but the point is that should provide you a lesson how the government works, because people weren't even thinking ahead. You're like, yeah, I'm getting this free check. So I'm not going to work, again, incentivizing poor behavior. What ended up happening was a lot of the mom and pop stores closed, right? A lot of businesses actually had to fold because they couldn't sustain it under the economic environment. They just couldn't thrive. Employees did not want to go to work. It was crazy. And so what ends up happening is the individuals get weaker and the corporations got bigger, right? Only the corporations could have survived in that environment, which is what unfortunately ended up happening. And then we put our own selves on the hook to be taxed into oblivion, to keep paying into this ridiculous thing that we agreed to pay into. It would have been much better for us to instead say, I'm happy to work. I don't want your small check. I want you to stop taking tax dollars from me. Shrink government, don't make it bigger. That always has to be the economic narrative. If you want to make government bigger, you are taking from me. Government does not make money. We make money, right? Government can only take money. So when you're
And that's exactly what I was saying before. And sorry, once again, I just have to break this up. So many things that align with Candace when it comes to her thoughts on government and taking accountability for yourself and your life.
Advocating for more government solutions, you are literally advocating for the government to come into your check and take more money from you.
Lord, that makes sense. But how were people better under Trump, though? Like what are some things that you can point to?
Well, I mean, like I said, common sense, everybody was living better under Trump, but just in terms of the environment for people that were entrepreneurial, definitively one of the first things he did was he started slashing regulations, slashing these barriers that prevent people who want to go into business from starting a business, because they learned that there's all of these government agencies that are, you got to get this in place, you got to get this in place, you have to get, this license. That's government agencies that are actually standing between you and starting a company. And so on his very first day, he was just like cutting regulations left and right, saying, throw this one out, throw this one out, throw this one out, which freed up the markets. At the end of the day, what I am is I'm a free market capitalist. Free the markets, allow people to compete fairly, stop allowing the government to stop people or, de-incentivize them from creating new jobs. I'll give you an example. A cousin of mine.
Sorry to interrupt, Candace, but it's a good point. Open markets, capitalism. At the moment, what they're operating is what is called crony capitalism. They are artificially propping up certain industries and putting downward pressure on other industries that consumers actually appreciate, need, and want. So that's what we're operating under. There is crony capitalism.
Wanted to start a food truck. Great, awesome. Love for you to do that. And he looked into how many certifications and barriers there were before he could actually start the food truck.
And now they're cooking rats on the streets of New York. When I say they, I'm talking about the illegal immigrants, migrants, cooking rats on the streets of New York to make a bit of money. See the hypocrisy here? So you got to have all these, all of these regulations in place if you want to start a food truck. But now it falls to bits because of the other BS that they've implemented. Cooking rats in the streets of New York.
That is the government growing powerful. Essentially, you have to have money or you have to know somebody to play the game for you to be able to start from nothing and make something of yourself. Economic mobility is really what it's about. So, I mean, that was one of the things that I loved the most about Trump, is that he was very sensible. He has a very good business head. He understands the business environment, and every person should want to, should be aspiring not to work for a bunch of people that don't have your best interests, but to be able. I
agree with that, but so many of his businesses have failed, though.
Yeah, but even failing is a part of the things that I've tried to do have failed, right? And I don't ever let that be a barrier. I think that there's always this psychological mindset of people that are fearful to fail. That's the best way for things to happen, because you learn so much in failure.
Exactly. When your sports team loses on the weekend, they tend to learn a lot more from the loss than they would from the win or, having a winning streak. They become complacent. They think they're the best. The desire, drive, and hunger starts to disappear, and then they get rolled. It's the same with children. You've got to let children learn and make mistakes. They become much more rounded children and young adults. Then they can handle when issues arise as they are adults and have to take full responsibility. That's why I'm a huge advocate for, young people working while they're at school, of course, because what they earn is theirs and they are responsible for that. They've earned that and they value that. They become more responsible with decision making throughout the rest of their adult life based on those lessons learned at a young age.
And people always want to point to and mock somebody for failing. Like, oh, she tried to do this and then she failed. Well, at least she tried. Yeah, right? Exactly. What are you doing?
And everybody has losses.
And you learn from them. You grow from those losses, and that's another, that's the thing that really bothers me too, is like that psychological conditioning of like, well, what's the point in trying because you might fail? It's like, no, you should try and you might fail. And then you'll learn. And the next time you try, you might make something of yourself.
So there we have it, folks. Can you believe it? Is this the Breakfast Club? Can you believe it? Charlamagne, DJ Envy, they're sitting there, they're listening, they're taking it all in. Are they starting to turn? And I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Okay, in previous videos, I've called Charlamagne, because I can't call him what he calls himself. I just can't do it. Can't bring myself to do it. I've called him Charlamagne the Knob, but I'm not going to call him Charlamagne the Knob today. I'm going to give him his flowers because he is having people on that he fundamentally disagrees with. He's had Vivek on there twice. He's had Larry Elder on there. Now, he did get slapped around from both of those gentlemen, let's face it. He got ragdolled. He got body bagged. He got roasted, toasted, and fried. Just in case you don't understand, they won, he got done. But today, I'm going to call him a winner because he's taking it all in. He really does seem to be interested in what Candace is saying. And I've got to say, he's not giving a lot of pushback. So I assume that he agrees with most of what she's saying, if not all. And thank God they got rid of that other woman, because they're actually able to have a proper conversation without her interrupting. Bringing that roast beef energy, that masculine energy. Leave that at home, please. Now, yes, I am a fan of Candace. I'm fanboying over her. But I just agree with so many of her takes. Even when it comes to Vivek, we're on the same bus. Like, huge respect for Vivek. Articulates his way himself extremely well. Unfortunately, he's out of the race. And like Candace, who's left? I agree with her. There's only one decision for people that believe in open and free markets, that believe in family. There's only one choice left. Now, yes, I would have been extremely happy with Vivek. I would have been happy with Ron DeSantis. He's a great leader. He's proved it. He has a track record. And just like them, or just like Ron, Trump has a track record as well. And I expect him to govern similarly to the way he did in his first term. And let's face it, the country was better off then. And that's what everyone seems to be saying. That's what the feedback seems to be. That's what the polls are showing. Joe Biden and the Democrat government have been a huge disappointment. But those people who voted for them last time, they really need to take accountability. They need to wake up. Anyone with common sense can see that the country under Joe Biden's rule, well, when I say rule, he's a muppet and he's sitting on the end of that hand. Everyone's worse off. They might argue, except, stock market, etc. But who is in the stock market? But that's going to wrap this video up, folks. It was a fascinating, interesting video, especially because Charlamagne and DJ Envy allowed Candace to speak. And before reacting to the video, without watching the video, because this is the first time I watched it, I did check out the comment section on The Breakfast Club. And a lot of their listeners had their eyes opened. And the feedback was hugely positive, and they were saying that they want more of this. They want to hear more of this positive message. So I'm going to give Charlamagne and The Breakfast Club their flowers. They deserve it for this particular episode. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Now, I did approximately half of this interview. If you want me to do the rest, let me know in the comments. I'll think about doing it. Otherwise, thanks once again for joining me. If you want to help a brother out, help me get to that 1,000 sub club. Hit the like 2, 3, 4, 5 times if you like. Smash the subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and don't forget to share this video far and wide, and I'll catch you in the next video.